And welcome everybody to another episode here at Bulletproof Selling. My name is Sean Rhodes, and I am the Chief Sales Sergeant here at Bulletproof Selling and author of the book Bulletproof Selling, a guide for systemizing sales on the battlefield of business. Now, here at Bulletproof Selling, I say it every week and I reiterate it. It's our mantra. It's our reason for being. We believe that hope is not a sales strategy. And so we are here as often as we can be to make sure that you have the systems, the processes, the skill sets to increase the performance of your pipeline and the performance of your sales teams. Now, in this Bulletproof Selling series, I get to meet with some of the smartest minds in sales. We've been able to bring on best-selling authors, Hall of Fame speakers, consultants, sales trainers, folks that are out there managing sales teams, and those that are helping those sales teams get more leads. So my commitment is that every single one of these episodes, I'm going to build a sales system with my guest that you can use, whether you're chasing that major account that's going to make your year, or whether you're just trying to figure out, hey, how do I get one more phone call, one more connection? Now, when I was in the military studying these high-performing teams all over the world through multiple combat tours, the thing that they relied on before they ever went out there in the field was their intelligence. The reason this was so important is that if they just went shooting and scooting, spraying and praying, it probably wasn't going to end well for them, and they probably weren't going to achieve their mission objective. So they made sure before they ever left the front gate on any mission that they would get an intelligence brief so that they knew the situation they were stepping into, what things were likely going to occur, what people they were probably going to run into, what environment they were going to be in. I mean, down to what the weather was probably going to be like, because all of that factored in helping them achieve their mission. But unfortunately, I see this way too often in the sales teams that I'm able to consult and coach with. Salespeople are just picking up the phone and dialing as fast as they can without taking the time to figure out what's going on in this prospect's company. What challenges are they likely experiencing, or that can I assume they're experiencing because I know a little bit about their industry? Well, that's why I am really excited to be able to bring on someone who's made his life's work about helping salespeople connect to the intelligence they need in order to get better prospects, to get people further through the pipeline, and of course, provide more value in that sale. So it's my honor to welcome to the show today, Mr. Jamie Shanks. Welcome to Bulletproof Selling, sir.
Sean, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about the company that you run, your experience in sales, and why intelligence is probably more important now than ever.
I've been a seller my whole life, and long of the short, I was once a VP of sales at a SaaS software company, software as a service company, 12 years ago. I thought I knew all the answers to the questions, so I decided to start a consultancy. That consultancy, about 2 years in, was claiming bankruptcy and failing.
I've been there.
And it was through serendipity a little bit and fortune that I self-discovered a topic and pioneered a category called social selling. So I wrote a couple books on the topic of social selling and built a global sales training company that enabled 250,000 sellers, 600 global companies around the world. And along that journey, to become certified in our company Sales for Life's training program, sellers needed to be able to select an account, plan it, engage it, and create a real life sales opportunity and defend it in a video case study. Well, when you sit on 250,000 certifications, you sit on a mountain of data. And the way that they were booking meetings was reverse, and this was part of the curriculum, reverse engineering their customer base using what's called the sphere of influence to look for a heat map as to where advocates have left and gone on to other businesses. Now, these relationship signals or compelling events were the impetus to us then a year ago starting a managed service where instead of just training the sellers on how to identify these relationship signals, this managed service monitors all of their accounts around the world and then highlights these and ports them into their CRM as a task notification. And so to answer your question directly, this was bred out of necessity of pipeline creation and watching sellers struggle with time management and account selection and account prioritization.
And it's a challenge that I see every salesperson run into, because they can even probably hear me in the intro to this show, Jamie. Yeah, Sean, I get that I need to do research, but man, I've got account activity that I'm held to every day. I've got to be making those calls. I've got to be sending emails. I've got to be doing site visits, all the things that my sales VP requires me to do. When am I going to find time to actually do the research to know a little bit about what's going on in my prospect's life, their social circle, their business life, their industry, their company? And without having all of that stuff in, they're literally relying on hope, hoping that they figure it out as they go, hoping that that one line opening really does the job for them. So I'm curious to know, this is a question that I ask every guest that we have on the show. Where do you see salespeople relying on hope more than they should in how they gather and how they use market intelligence?
Well, let's actually, as you were finishing what you were mentioning before, let's actually touch upon that. So think about yourself as the chief revenue officer. Your job is to deploy capital so that that capital can earn 4, 5 to 7 times its rate of return. So meaning when you pay a seller $100,000 a year plus their desk fee, commissions, benefits, and so forth, their responsibility is to earn 4, 5 to 7 times that return. The problem is at scale, the average seller is spending, and this is a Gartner study, 13% of their week mining, squirreling around, mining intelligence to help make informed decisions.
Yeah.
The sellers that are doing that, that's a time management issue. You're paying $500 value at creators to do $5 an hour tasks. But then there's a huge cohort of sellers that aren't doing this. So they're taking what should be objectively right in front of their face and making subjective decisions, gut checks around which accounts do I focus in on? Do I call account A versus account B? So when it comes to your question around hope, I think that's camp number 2, cohort number 2. Cohort number 2 is, unfortunately, if you looked at Pareto's law, that would be like 80% of sellers that do not have an objective strategy. So they are subjectively calling through the alphabet or calling into a geographic node. They're calling into a geographic node, but there's not any real data set as to why account A over B or today, not tomorrow. And that is the definition of hope, really.
Yep. Yeah. Without knowing ahead of time, what I'm trying to achieve on this call. I mean, account objectives and call objectives are something so crucial that so many salespeople really miss the boat on, because they'll just pick up the phone and dial in without checking to see, where is this person in my pipeline? How much data do I have on them, on their company, on their industry? How much do I know about conversations that I've had with them that I could actually make a recommendation for a product or service instead of just showing up being like, hey, I got this stuff. Would you like to buy it? So if call objectives are probably the first thing that we need to build into, where should I be really slotting in all of the things that software platforms like yours do? Because I know that you want to provide value to any salesperson, whether they end up signing on with you as a client in their company or not. So if I've got account objectives, I need to know who the decision maker is, maybe a budget window, who they've used in the past for whatever it is that I sell. Where does the market data that your service provides filter into account objectives? How do I really use that, gather it, or leverage it if I'm just a solo operator out there in the field?
So let's actually back up one slot, and I'm a visual guy, so let's actually use my Yeti water bottle as the example. So Yeti is your target account. Before you actually dive into the mechanics of what you're going to say, you have a fundamental question to ask yourself. Why Yeti versus Igloo coolers? Why Yeti today, not tomorrow, or Igloo, or so forth? So when you look at an account-based map of sales intelligence, there are 2, arguably 3 data points, sales intelligence data points, that help you make that informed decision. The most obvious and famous one that many sales and marketing organizations are accustomed to is a type of sales intelligence called buying intent. Buying intent are tools and technology that are telling you who's raising their hand and asking questions, Googling keywords, downloading your ebook, and showing informed interest in a topic that relates to you.
Right.
But that, unfortunately, is, as part of an account-based puzzle, is just a puzzle piece, because that just might be one key stakeholder in a myriad of the buying committee who's interested in what you do. So now look at another data set around relationships, specifically human capital migration. Remember, in a business, it's people who make decisions. Like a company, Yeti doesn't get out of bed to decide what it wants to do today. It's the people that work within Yeti. And people, if you follow these people, will go into a business and bring priorities with them, be promoted and take priorities up with them, or leave out the door and take a priority or an initiative with them as they walk out. And so if you follow the humans, and track the humans. You have an early leading indicator as to priorities about to go into a business, up or out. And how are they interrelated to your past successes? We call that an asymmetrical competitive advantage for you. Or how are they related to your competitor? Like, did they used to work at your competitor? Now your competitor has an asymmetrical competitive advantage. So in an account-based puzzle, there are these data sets, groupings of data that will help you make an informed decision. And the two ones that I think your audience would appreciate, buying intent, they're probably heard of, and a new emerging category around relationships.
And so it sounds like that most salespeople then are really focusing on the lagging indicators in that puzzle. And then I want to know who's engaged with my website, who's downloaded my ebook, who's kind of made some kind of inbound motion toward me to indicate intent. And that's always kind of after bang is what we called it in the military. If there was an incident, a firefight, a bomb went off, that was bang.
Yeah, you
want to focus on
yeah.
You want to focus on what's left of bang, like what happened before the bang, so that we can get ahead of that next time. We can prevent bang from happening. Right. We can save lives, get the mission done faster. If all I'm focusing on is cleanup after the fact, and cleanup in this case is they've already expressed interest, which means they're probably expressing interest to other companies just like mine, which means now I have competitors that I might not know about. All kinds of bad things can happen. So it sounds like what you're encouraging salespeople to focus on is left of bang. What are the indicators that happen almost right at that moment before somebody hits send on that email to you or picks up the phone to make that inbound inquiry?
Well, here's an example, a statistical example of this. So when a new key stakeholder takes a new role in a company, whatever that role might be, chief human resources officer, chief technology officer, in the first 100 days on the job, after they walk in the office and they figure out where the washroom is, they start to settle down and they have about 100 days to build a strategic plan and execute on it. And it's touted that in that first 100 days, they will have either physically deployed or mentally deployed up to 70% of their remitted budget for the year. Why? They need to make an impact. They're an executive.
Yeah.
And what do they typically want to do? They bring in the people, process, and technology that they were successful with in the past. Yeah. So wouldn't it make sense to follow an advocate of yours going into a new business? And when they get there, congratulate them, build them a 100-day roadmap of success. And as they start to formulate that plan, the brand awareness comes forward and you're there during that moment when they start developing their business plan. And they're most likely going to choose a vendor that they're most accustomed to and they enjoy versus a net new vendor. And so this is your opportunity to, as your point, the bang, whatever you called it, get there before the RFP kind of thing.
Yep. I love it. And so that's the instance if I know of somebody that's new in their position, but so many salespeople are stepping onto job sites, they're walking in company doors these days, and they're looking at people that have maybe been in their position for 20 years. So how does market intelligence serve me for someone that's been in their role for a long time?
So one of the exercises that you can do, and I'll tell a real life story around this, is a deselection and deprioritization exercise. So as important as figuring out who you should call, obviously from a time management perspective, if I'm calling down a list, every minute I'm spending on accounts that won't buy, and unfortunately, statistically, they call it the Chet Holmes pyramid, 3 to maybe 10% of a market is willing to buy at any given time. How do I at least start scratching off that bottom cohort that just has no opportunity? Here's what you can do, and I'll tell a story. Working with a cybersecurity customer, we're doing a live workshop. And in this live workshop, sellers were grouped into these team-based tables. They needed to select an account, plan it, and develop a prospecting cadence and strategy. About a half hour into this workshop, I see a lady in the corner crying at this workshop. And I pull her aside and I said, I got to ask, what's going on? She said, the account that we selected was my customer or my prospective customer, Harley Davidson. I'd been working this account for 8 months and I couldn't figure out why for 8 months, deals just kept stalling. All I had to do was I reverse engineered the teammates at Harley to discover that the chief operating officer used to work at my competitor. And obviously deals would come in of interest, and then they would hit a brick wall when that COO would just say, why wouldn't we just use my old employer?
Yeah.
And it was publicly available data that she could have either deselected or completely deprioritized the account. The purpose of why I'm telling you this is, what can you do to existing teammates, not forget the net new job hires? Well, an exercise of looking through the experience levels, the skills, certifications, projects launched with, and employment history of the people that you're targeting. And how can that tell you a story as to the type of priorities that might be going forward or backwards in the business?
I love it. I love it. So it sounds like this is something that would benefit any salesperson to have a sales system built around, whether they're using a piece of software that does it for them, or whether they're willing to do the grunt work and the legwork, because this is one of those ideal accounts for them. This could make or break their year. So if we build sales systems here at Bulletproof Selling, we're literally talking about trimming hope off of salespeople's strategies. So to make it simple, we use this acronym TRIM, T-R-I-M. Now the T in the TRIM is the trigger element. And so when should I start thinking about implementing a system that's going to give me market intelligence on a prospect? Does it happen before I make the call? Does it happen before I'm even researching prospects to put into my pipeline? When does the trigger element come in so I know when to launch this thing?
So either or. Of course, if I'm talking at a revenue operations level, I'm actually using this type of sales intelligence to actually segment my database and prioritize accounts. If I'm an individual seller, to your point, if I've already been assigned a list of named accounts, maybe 50 or 100 accounts, prospecting is a left and a right brain motion. On the left side of your brain, you collect data and intelligence to make informed decisions. Then, and I believe it's an order of operations, you start on that left side, you make your list, you objectively decide why, then you move to the right side of the brain, and you take the intelligence you collected to engage in a bold and different way. And so I believe, what's that, ready, fire, aim, or whatever that saying is? That's as if you were engaging before you were objectively deciding today, not tomorrow, account A versus account B. So in order of operations, left brain before the right brain.
Gotcha. All right. So if that's the trigger element, which it sounds like it's really as we're planning out our week, even whether we're on named accounts or researching named accounts that we can pursue, or our salespeople can pursue. Now, the R in that acronym is repeatable, because I need to be able to consistently execute this again and again and again across accounts. So if I've got that named account, because I've made the decision in my trigger stage that this is an account I want to pursue, widget manufacturing company, whatever it is, what are the steps that you would recommend salespeople walk through if they're doing this legwork on their own? Maybe 5 or 7 steps that they can just do on this prospect, Jim Smith, to figure out all the things we've been talking about.
First thing I would do is, whether you're in free LinkedIn, you can still save a search, or in LinkedIn Navigator, save that account or series of accounts for future repeating of this event, because 3% of your database is going to deplete every month. The average chief revenue officer stays for 6 quarters. The average chief human resources officer lasts 16 months. So you want to be prepared that this will be a recurring event.
Right.
Then as well, the things that I would want to have done in advance is built my right brain cadence. So if you think about the 3 levers that you can control as a seller, I can control the stories that I tell, the mediums at which I tell stories, and then what's called the cadence and sequence, meaning the order of operations in my storytelling. I would have that pre-built. As an example, you might have a 5-touch cadence that would last over a 2-week time frame. My story would be, I'm going to tell story 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. I'll use mediums of communication. I'll send a video. Then I'll write an email. Then I'll write a letter. Then I'll use Sendoso to send a care package. Then I'll call. I'm just making something up. That's what you can control. And then cadence and sequence, order of operations of stories, and time and distance between stories. All of that should be pre-built before the engagement. And it's funny, you said turn off the thing, but my Apple Watch.
It was excited. It wants to engage.
It wants in. So now this allows me to accelerate my engagement. I'll give you an example for me. I am an owner of two companies. I own Sales for Life, the global sales training company, and our startup Pipeline Signals, and it's growing rapidly. I have a repeatable system. Every night from 7 to 8 p.m. Yes, I'm a pretty cool guy. This is what I do on a night at 7 o'clock. I build 5 prospects that I want to engage. I identify who the key stakeholders are, and I mine for signals for them so that I can share the opportunity cost of the signals that they may have missed. Next morning at 7 a.m., I'm up at 5 every day. At 7 a.m., I engage those 5 prospects. And what happens is it becomes a waterfall. The sales qualified leads start to come in, but I've pre-built this machine because my window of opportunity is so small in a day. So I hope that
you mentioned those signals. So this is, in my mind, is where that market intelligence would come in. So once I've identified my prospects, I know I've got a sequence that I'm going to run them through. Obviously, I don't want to tell the same story to 50 different people when their signals may be triggered by different things. Some of them are worried about priority A, some of them are worried about priority B. So what are some of those signals that you're looking for so that you can customize those stories to be really engaging when they end up in your prospect's inbox?
Here's the exact process that we use. So we'll use your company, Bulletproof Selling. I would drop onto your case study page of your website, and I would then reverse engineer your customers. I would look at people who left. So as an example, you clearly served in the military. And I don't know what branch that is, but let's say I knew what that is. I would look for people who left that branch and became a chief revenue officer. Okay. Then what I would do is in my message, I'd say, Sean, by the way, did you know that Sam Smith is now the chief revenue officer over at Okta? He actually served in the 101st, blah, 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 blah. Now all of a sudden, you can actually think, now all of a sudden you say, how did I miss this? You know? And that is what we sell, is we sell opportunity cost of missing these signals.
Gotcha. So if one of those signals for a salesperson that I'm then, let's say I'm a salesperson and I'm dealing with company X, obviously people that have a similar background than me in company X would be a valuable piece of data for me to want to leverage in because it gives me that connection. Easy phone call to pick up and say, we went to the same church together. We're from the same hometown. We served in the same branch of the military, all of that. And so that's one of those signals. What's one more that you really are paying attention to that might not be so obvious from just a cursory glance at a LinkedIn page?
Well, I mean, an obvious one, I think, to everybody, but I think there's a delta gap between the knowing and the doing is I can say we were connected on LinkedIn. I can reverse engineer every connection you have and figure out the cohort of the top 3 to 5 companies that you know best. So there's a button in LinkedIn where I can click your connections and it rolls up in order of operations, the social proximity that you have with certain companies.
Right.
I could then highlight it. That's a data point that I would look for. How interconnected are you to company ABC for a referral? That's just another example.
And this is going to be a wrench in your works because LinkedIn is so critical to a lot of the world that we live in as salespeople. But I've come across quite a few prospects that aren't on LinkedIn. Yeah. And so how would you recommend I just use online searches in general in this way?
Yes. So for me, I'll Google a person. And so if you Google a person, instead of using the all button, I use video or images. And it picks up that person's name, and I'll see every social media post that has that person tagged. I'll see any video that had them on YouTube or otherwise, so I can get a contextual story of that person.
Awesome. That's brilliant. And that's a great way to be able to go even outside of LinkedIn or use LinkedIn as well as that technique in the repeatable section of this sales process. So we've got the trigger, we've got making it repeatable. Now, the eye in trim is something that we had to learn how to do in the military pretty often because the battle space for us changed a lot, just like the battle space for salespeople has changed an incredible amount in the last few years. So the eye is making this thing improvable in a way that I can take a look at it and say, all right, it's working, or it's not working as well as I want it to. Where do I make adjustments? In ways that this thing can get even better than it is, or I noticed that I'm just not getting results on LinkedIn. I got to figure something else out. What is that thing that I can begin to look at to make it improvable?
I'm in the eye as an example right now with my own engagement strategy, both with our own self and our customers. And I'll give you a real life example. Our customers have now been engaging their past customers at prospective accounts. Some are booking meetings, and some are also running into this objection. I'm so new at the company. I don't know what my budget is yet. I don't know the strategic initiatives. That's still a great thing, because what you've done is you've created engagement, you've brought forward that brand awareness, and what you want to do is boomerang a bit of a clock and recognize that 100 days from now, that person's going to go from a neophyte all the way to, in 90 days, they have to have a business plan in front of.
Right. And they've allocated their budget, as you mentioned. So you better make sure you're part of that budget.
You need to have a process that is finding ways to re-engage with value, day 30, day 60, day 90. That's an iterative process. That's something that you don't just wake up and version 1 of your engagement strategy is lights out. This is going to be a refinable process between times of the day, subject lines, email, call scripts, calls to action. There's an endless myriad of scrubbings that you could do to your engagement strategy.
Love it. Love it. So we've got making this thing repeatable, improvable. And now the final bit on it is really something that sales leaders care a lot about. And that's the M in trim, which is measurable. How do I measure the effect of this so that I know it's better than what I was doing before, when probably a lot of salespeople are just, smiling and dialing? The techniques you've given us should help a little bit with at least generating those initial conversations, if not moving these people way further into the pipeline than they might have been otherwise. So how do I measure the results of leveraging market intelligence in a prospecting sequence?
Well, it's easy if you're a partner for somebody like us, because all of our sales intelligence is in your CRM. So thus you can run campaigns, reports, and dashboards and know exactly utilization rates all the way to opportunity creation. But if you're doing this on your own, what I'd recommend is understand, if you think of levers, there's volume, velocity, and convertibility. Those are the things that happen in sales metrics. Volume, how many units? Velocity, how long does it take me to get from A to B? And then convertibility, if I made 10 dials, do I get 1 conversation? So those are the simplest metrics. Take a bit of a baseline of that before you begin a campaign of something like relationship signals, to figure out, what does normal look like to you?
Yeah.
Here's my bet. My bet is 2 metrics are going to hyper accelerate. One is velocity. You're going to find out your opening doors a lot quicker. I'll give you an example. I booked a meeting yesterday, sent an email, an hour later, meeting booked with, president of a company. How? A past customer. It took an hour. So shrank my time to a sales qualified lead. But then convertibility. You're there's statistics anywhere between 3 to 5 to 6 times more likely to convert a past customer than you are to win over a net new.
Sure.
You're just focused on your past advocates.
Love it. So we've got that, making it repeatable, improvable, measurable, a complete sales system for how to find and leverage market intelligence, which, as I mentioned in the intro to this interview, without intelligence, we literally would just be wandering around hoping that we ran into the people we were looking for. Shouldn't do that in combat. You definitely shouldn't be doing that in sales. So Jamie, from end to end, this is something that's going to help every salesperson out there if they take the time to use it. So let's talk about the resource that you've then built, one of the companies that you run, that actually helps salespeople make this happen for themselves in a way that they can just show up, log into their CRM, and all the stuff that we've talked about having to go research is right there at their fingertips. Talk to us a little bit about that, how to find out more about you.
Company is called PipelineSignals.com. And to your point, my job is to buy back your sellers' time, to have them focused on engagement and not market researchers. So we take that very sales intelligence we talked about, relationship signals, we port them into your CRM as task notifications. So your sellers wake up and they see a task. Jane Smith just left your customer. It's over at this prospect. Here are the next steps and actions we recommend that you take. So now your sellers have everything in one point of truth, your CRM, to make these informed decisions. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or go to PipelineSignals.com. We'd love to be able to talk to you.
Awesome. And just for the people out there that are considering this, I imagine you have some kind of a demo you can show them, or limited use, license they can have, so they can actually see the impact and effect of having all of that data at your fingertips. Because Jamie, I do what we've been talking about myself. I know how much time it takes me, and I know how much time it would save me if that stuff was just imported into my CRM. So if people get in touch with you and they want to book a meeting, can they count on you showing them, at least on your end, what this looks like inside a CRM?
100%. You will have a demo right away.
Love it, man. Love it. Well, I'll make sure you are connecting with Jamie. Very, very valuable stuff that he's got over there about leveraging market intelligence to help you sell more, increase velocity, and of course, increase movement through your pipeline. For us here at Bulletproof Selling, make sure you're following us on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and YouTube for these live streams. Every single one of them is archived. In addition to the podcast that we create out of them, you might be listening on iTunes, you might be listening on Stitcher or Spotify, but they're all out there wherever podcasts can be found. Every single one of these great interviews, every single one of them has a sales system attached to it, just like you heard today. And for more sales systems to actually help you replace hope with certainty across your sales cycle, across your pipeline, make sure you're checking out the free resources that we have over at bulletproof-selling.com. Well, Sean Rhodes here. Absolute pleasure serving the sales community alongside you, Jamie. Let's get out there and make selling bulletproof.